Life sometimes come at you fast. Tragedies make your life unravel. You feel like you wanna give up and stay knocked down. Even when your heart is shattered, you still got a life to live. You still got a life to live, so don't give up. We are beautiful miracles. We are beautiful miracles. We are beautiful miracles, so don't give up.
Hello, everybody. My name's Carrie Schmidt, and I'd like to welcome you to my podcast, A Beautiful Tragedy. And if you like what you're hearing, I would greatly appreciate if you would like, comment, share, and subscribe to this podcast, because we want to get this information out to as many people as we can to help them during a very difficult time. In today's episode, I'm going to be talking about what I like to call P.W.G, which is parenting while grieving. And, you know, when I first had my son, you look at them and you love them and you just are just enamored by them, and you think to yourself, oh, I just can't imagine what I would ever do without you. But I just think the truth of the matter is that I don't think people really think about the possibility of their child dying. I know I didn't. And when our 7-year-old son, Jackson, was dying and we had to tell our 3-year-old, that was probably the second hardest thing I've ever had to do. After being told that there was nothing they could do for our son, having to tell our other son was one of the worst experiences of my life. He seemed to understand as much as he possibly could at his age, but statistics actually say that kids don't understand the permanence of death just developmentally until they're at least 4.5. And, when you have to parent a child while you're grieving, it feels impossible. My mind was super distracted. I was sad. I was questioning if I could have done more. I was in shock. I was in denial. I was angry. And my son would ask questions that would throttle me. And he would say, we would be playing and he'd say, Mom, does Jackson still have bones? And it would throttle me. And it was always surprising to me how much he recalled. We were playing Play-Doh one time, and he said, I'm going to make a tube like Jackson had in his throat at the hospital. And it stunned me, because I just didn't realize how much of it he remembered. And, during that time, we were trying to think about the good times. We were trying to remember the happy times. But the reality is that my 3-year-old's idol was gone. And when he first died, we were obsessively looking at pictures and videos and crying, and Ivan felt very left out. And he would say, what about me? And we would say, Ivan, we are so sad that Jackson died, but we are so glad that you're still here. And that would settle his little baby soul. And not only did that remind him, but it reminded us of that too, because we were just inundated with our sadness. And I think about if I had any regrets about anything that happened, mistakes, that stuff really destroys me. But when I focus on what Jackson doesn't get to do, I can't. It agonizes me. And, I'm still very early on in my journey, and I'm doing the only thing I know how, and that's to take the punches as they come. There are days that the waves of grief wipe me out, and I think about things like Jackson's never going to have a girlfriend. He didn't get to drive a car. He didn't get to do things like that, and that breaks my heart. But there's people along the way that have said things that have just really kind of calmed my soul. And someone said to me, Jackson only ever knew love and security in his life. And, not every child can say that. And he never had to question where was his next meal coming from. We he just had a lot of security. And those are the little things that sometimes people can say that can really help move you along in your journey. You know, when you have to parent while you're also grieving, it's just an impossible balance, because your thoughts can just get very wrapped up in the loss. But, you know, the truth of the matter is I still had a very young child who needed me for basically everything. And he needed my presence, and he needed my attention, and he needed my care. And I still find it to be a very difficult balance. You know, I couldn't control how much I was crying. I couldn't stop. And I'll never forget one time we were looking at pictures, and I was crying, and Ivan punched me in the face, and he said, "Mom, stop crying." I said, "I can't." And he just, you know, he had explained to me at one point, it had been several months, and a lot of our focus had been talking about Jackson. Obviously, we were still caring for Ivan, but he said, "Mom, I don't want to talk about Jackson all the time." And as hard as that was for me to hear, it was something that I realized that I needed to find a better balance with, because Ivan was still here, and I did still need to give him the attention and the care, and just find a better balance with that. And I remember our grief therapist telling us we shouldn't pedestal. We shouldn't put Jackson up on a pedestal. And I remember that made me very angry at the time, because I thought, first of all, hey, you don't even have kids. How can you say something like that? That's a very unfair thing to say. But then over time, when Ivan, you know, expressed that he didn't want us to always talk about Jackson, and I realized that if we put that child up on a pedestal, then our surviving child can never live up to that. And that's not fair to them. It's hard and it sucks. But it was something that I felt that was really important, because if Ivan was verbalizing that to me, I think it was something that was really important. His play therapist always says it's better out than in. And so even though there's things that Ivan says sometimes, you know, I try to listen to what he needs to, you know, because children don't grieve the same as adults. They have a very small capacity of being uncomfortable. So kids, a lot of times they'll be playing and then ask a question and then get right back to playing. Their capacity is less than what ours is. And we can sit and be sad and cry for hours and days sometimes. And that's just not how it works with kids. And kids kind of show their grief in different ways. One of the ways that Ivan really displayed his sadness and grief was through anxiety. And he was terrified that I was going to leave him and not come back. And that is logically what happened to his brother. His brother was there one day and then he was gone. And that's a lot for a little brain to understand. That's a lot for an adult to understand. And I feel like sometimes as a society, we can be a little bit dismissive of children's mental health. People think, oh, kids are resilient, they'll be fine. Well, sometimes when they've experienced a major trauma like this, they might need a little help through that. And, I feel like we want to protect our children sometimes. We don't want to see them in pain, and we don't want to have those hard discussions with them. But, over the years, the family dynamics have changed. People used to live with their grandparents, and so kids they saw death more. And now we kind of protect them from that. So then when a death happens, it's that much more traumatic because they don't know it. We, most of the time, don't really have talks about death beforehand, before it happens. A lot of times you learn from a pet's death or something like that, or grandma's death. And that's kind of a lot where a lot of the books are focused, is on kind of more the deaths on the fringe, not necessarily the, inner family circle. when Jackson died, we weren't given a choice. We only had one chance. We had to tell Ivan the truth, and without the help of the child life specialists at the hospital, I don't know where we would be, because they helped equip me with the tools that I needed to share the terms that he needed to hear, to understand. And, you know, sometimes we use terms like passed away, or even sometimes people say, if you go to a funeral, they're asleep. Well, they told us you cannot use those terms. You have to use he died, not even passed away. He died. His body doesn't work anymore. And again, this was a very, very difficult subject to broach. And, you know, Ivan would say, Mom, I'm not sad that my brother died. I don't need to cry. And I would say, well, you know, that's okay. You don't always have to cry when you're sad, but it's okay if you need to cry. So, you know, we're also at the same time trying to break the stigmas that our society wants to put on boys crying. And that can also be difficult, because we want him to be able to express his emotions, and we want him to be able to get them out so that they don't stay inside and become much bigger anxiety issues. And when Ivan started preschool, it had been a little over a year since Jackson had died, and his anxiety was in full swing. And he would ask me 200 times the night before school if I was going to come back to get him. And he was asking in sheer terror, because he started to realize that since his brother died, he realized it could happen to other people. And he was very scared of it happening to me. And so I would say, yes, I'm going to come back. Yes, I'm going to come back. But it was like I just wasn't finding the right words to say to calm his nerves. And then 100 times the day of school. And then he would cry, and he would cry all day throughout the school day. And once he saw me again, he realized it was going to be okay. But then that went on for 6 weeks, and it was terrible for both of us. And, you know, so he's 5.5 now, and he's learning still how to express his feelings. And in the beginning, he had a lot of anger, and he was very explosive. And, you know, the truth is that death brings out big feelings in adults as well. And so when it happens to a child and they're trying to learn how to express their own feelings as well as process something very big and traumatic, it can be definitely very hard. And, you know, but the one thing I see with Ivan is that he has overcome so much, and it's been through a lot of hard work. We've gone to play therapy now for 2 years, and he used to go weekly, and then we would try to spread it out. And, you know, if he was having an issue that I didn't know how to help him with, we would, you know, go a little bit sooner. And, you know, through this process, I'm learning that sometimes he just needs to process. He just needs to say it. And sometimes I don't feel equipped to do that. And so thankfully I have help. I have someone who I can reach out to. And another thing through this podcast, I really want to talk and share about the different types of therapy that is available for children. Kids are not going to just sit on a couch and talk about their feelings. That's why things like play therapy, art therapy, and music therapy are such wonderful modalities that are really geared more towards kids, and they can process their feelings through play or art or sand tray therapy. And music is another beautiful way to process that. And so in future episodes, we will be interviewing different therapists so that you guys can learn about what there is available. You know, Ivan learned something early in life, and that will always break my heart. He knows that children die sometimes. And, you know, when we go to the playground, he tells other kids about his brother, and I don't shush him. I let him say it. And it's just a part of who he is, and it's made him a very empathetic child. And he realizes that, you know, there are struggles in this world. As much as we want to protect our children from that, I couldn't do that. So I want to be an encouragement to parents if you've lost a child and if you have another child that you're parenting. It's hard, but there's hope and there's help available, and I wouldn't wish it upon my worst enemy, but you can come out on the other side. So there's some people who can do this without therapy. Personally, that's not been the case for me. I've needed lots of therapy and lots of guidance because it all feels very uncomfortable and very wrong. And so, that's my own experience with parenting while grieving, as well as different ways that children grieve. So, if you have examples of how you've gotten through parenting while grieving, I would love to hear from you, because I want to share this with other people. And knowing that there's people out there who have been through this before us, I'm just going to have to end every episode like this, and because we're all just walking each other home. We're all trying to figure this out, and I don't think really any of us know what we're doing. And so I want to thank you for tuning in. I want to thank you for any support that you would give to this podcast, because I know we're talking about difficult subjects, but it's never going to change if we don't start to shed light on it. So thank you for tuning in.